we're live, brother. How you doing, man?
Hey, pretty good. It is Monday, the start of a week, start of UTSA week. Me and being in San Antonio, man, I know how they feel about their road runners here, man. But kind of wanted to talk about Sark. A couple of things here we may not do on the show is talk about rat poison because Sark ain't playing that shit. You know what I'm saying? He's like, I'm not dealing with no rat poison. And the second thing, man, I love about Sark is that he took something from Saban, and he's not answering no crazy ass questions, man, during these press conferences. He's going to keep it real. He's going to tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear, and he ain't trying to give up too much information either.
No, I like the close to the vest. You know, someone asked him who was taking snaps in practice, and he's like, "That's for me to know." Yeah, he tries to keep everything close to the vest and internal and keep it out of the media, and I love it. Like you said, coming off, folks are hesitant to call it a moral victory, and I am too. You know, an L is an L, but there was a lot to grow, and Texas is getting a lot of love. You know, they're the first team to ever jump up in the rankings after taking a loss, which is something. But we thought that. We talked about that post game. I thought they'd be in that 15 area. I think they ended up being 21. But he just doesn't want this to sink in and to rest on their laurels. And UTSA, man, if you go to Conference USA and look at their preseason, number one teams, number two teams, they got 3 guys on the first team offense, 3 guys on the first team defense, peppered throughout the second and third team. So you got a talented team in here coming off a 12-2 season. Like you said, he's one of those guys that says, don't believe in the rat poison. And I'm right there with him, take every opponent seriously. Come out Saturday at 7:00 at DKR. Hopefully the fans are as rowdy as they were against Alabama. I don't see that happening, but if they could be some semblance of that turnout and that fired up feeling that we had on Saturday, take this team seriously, go out there and do your job and compete and win the football game.
Yeah, again, I listened to Jeff Traylor today. I listened to him right before I came on here. I was actually listening to his press conference, man, and there are a couple of things that came out of his press conference, and we'll get into really Steve Sarkisian's press conference, man. That is a passionate dude, one passionate guy, man, that will get his guys to believe that they can come into DKR and win. On top of that, he was very, very impressed what Texas did to Alabama. He said, you could ask me 1 time, 2 times, 3 times. They beat Alabama up. He kept saying that, man. He said, I am absolutely impressed what Bo Davis and Kyle Flood has been able to do with that offensive defensive line in the short amount of time. He said those dudes are huge, man. And he started going down a list, man. He went all the way from, he said, Christian Jones, unbelievable. Unbelievable, his size. Cole Hudson, unbelievable. Jake Majors, he knows these guys. A lot of these guys he knows. And he got down to Kelvin Banks. He said, yeah, he'll be a first-round draft pick. No doubt. But the love he was showing, but he was doing it. He said it twice about Kyle Flood and Bo Davis. He said that offensive line and that defensive line. He said they beat Alabama on the field on Saturday. They beat Alabama on the field on Saturday. And he says, I know Sarkisian's not looking at that as a win. At the same time, he understands that that team is going to be ready to play UTSA on Saturday. And I think it's important that they keep that same mind frame. You're talking about Saturday, right? Saturday, and I think Steve Sarkisian said it best, getting back to his press conference, is the fans and the team were one. They were one element together, one element, meaning that it didn't, as soon as you left the lines, the 100 yards started increasing to the really the fans on the sideline. And I think that is, I don't think you're going to bring it Alabama style every weekend. I think that's a hype game, and they asked Steve Sarkisian about that too. Is this like an SEC game? He said, absolutely. It's that type of game, physical, those type of crowds, one possession games. But the hype was there with the ESPN and Fox and number one team coming into your stadium and not giving you a shot to win one. We'll talk a little bit about that too. But it was one of those things where it was like, I don't think you'll see the fan base this year get to that level at home just because you're not going to see an opponent in Alabama again. Prove me wrong, but I don't think it's going to be that hyped.
No. But what you want to see is folks in their seat and being active and staying for 4 quarters and being loud when the defense is on the field to do the same thing they did on Saturday against Alabama, and that's disrupt the offense. But a couple things. Will Anderson said, and he's been in a lot of big football games, right? He's a junior at Alabama. He's played multiple national championship games. He played at Georgia. He's played probably in the swamp. He's played at Tennessee. He's played at Ole Miss. And he said it's the best football environment that he's ever played in. And so that's number one. And then going back to Jeff Traylor and having his team ready to play, he was an East Texas high school football coach. And him and Joey McGuire had this special on Dave Campbell's Texas Football. Again, they're on the cover of it. But Bally's did a profile on those guys, and you could tell, like you said, the passion and where he comes from and understanding what it is in the state of Texas to play football and to be around that. And he's grown up through coaching. Again, he's a high school football coach who went to a fledgling program at University of Texas San Antonio. And these are Texas athletes. And you talk about him bragging on Texas size and their potential at the line. They roll out dudes. I was looking at their and again, I don't know what their injury report says, and their 2 deep may be different, but they roll out a tight end that's 6'4", 275, and Oscar Cardenas, and he's number 1 in Conference USA. He's first team Conference USA. Their center is first team Conference USA, 6'5", 335. I'm not going to pronounce his first name, but I'll pronounce his last name is Maka. And then across the front, 335, 340, 300, and 312 pounds. So they have size. And if you go to the defensive line, it's the same type size group. And they're probably Texas high school football players. I didn't look at their roster, but I imagine our guys played against them in high school. So there's probably a lot of familiarity that you're going to get between UTSA's roster and Texas roster when they come to play on Saturday. But yeah, I appreciate Jeff Traylor. Again, units. They got the number 1 quarterback in Conference USA. They lost their best running back, Sincere McCormick. He graduated, so their running backs aren't as high. But they got the number 1 wide receiver group in Conference USA, number 2 O-line, number 3 D-line, number 2 linebackers, and number 3 in defensive backs. And the only guy that's undersized is probably their best player on defense, and that's Rashad Wisdom. He's a 5'9", 205-pound, free safety, but he's the most impactful player they have on defense. So, again, Texas, I know, has a lot of respect. Steve Sarkisian said it today about what Jeff Traylor's program is bringing to Austin on Saturday. It's just those 85 men that are in his locker room need to believe the same thing that he believes, and that's they're going to give us a football game. Again, it opened up as a 13.5-point, spread for Texas being the favorite, and it's since, reduced because we don't know who's going to take snaps at center, whether Hudson Card's going to be able to come back off that ankle injury, or is it going to be Charles Wright? We know it's probably not going to be Malik Murphy after the comments that Sark had today, but good football team coming in here. You need to take them serious and come out with that same passion that you did against Alabama and not play down to the level of what you presume the level of your competition.
Yeah, and again, I guess it's a pretty good thing that I listened to Traylor's press conference today. They're down both their left tackles. They're actually starting a walk-on left tackle this game.
There you go.
Walk-on left tackle. So they're down both left tackles. Both of their tackles are both injured from an injury standpoint. But he was talking about, they asked him about that spread of 14 points, right? And he said, what? 14 points? That means that if they gave us 14 points against Alabama, this is how impressed he was with Texas, right? So you're going to give UTSA 14 points against Alabama, Georgia, and was it Texas, Alabama, and Georgia? I'll take it all day long because those are some damn good programs. He's like 14.5 points. What? That joker, when he heard it, he's thinking that damn spread, that it's somewhere between 20 and 30 points wider. He said, you're telling me 14 points between Texas and Alabama and Georgia? Come on now.
But that's coy. That's coach speak, right? Just like everybody was talking about, well, Saban's going to talk up Texas because he talks up everybody. He's going to talk up Quinn Ewers because he talks up everybody's quarterback. He's going to talk up Steve Sarkisian's offense because he talks up everybody's offense. But I believe the best coach in the nation and the best coach historically in college football knew what he was dealing with on Saturday. And you kind of talked about it with your film study of his football team, Alabama against Utah State. You said, yeah, the scoreline was 55-0, but they're not 55-0 better than than Utah State. Some things happen in that football game, and I think we can line up and play with them. And we talked about it in our pregame show, and our scoreline was a hell of a lot closer than what most people thought. And our football team came to play, and for 4 quarters, they out-physicaled Alabama, out-disciplined Alabama. And if they bring that same kind of what Jeff Traylor saw on film, they bring that same kind of intensity and that same physicality, then yeah, he's probably right. Texas is probably 20 to 28 to 30 points better than UTEP or UTSA. But he's going to say that as the head football coach of UTSA because he wants to feed Texas rat poison. I would do the same thing.
It's funny because he brought that up. He's like, I don't have anything to hold back, right? I forgot what he was talking about. I think it was either injuries or something else. He said, shit, I don't have anything to hold back because there's not going to be Texas Long. No, let me tell you something. Nobody on the Texas Longhorn staff is going to be watching my press conference today. That's what he did say. He's like, I don't have reason to hold back anything because I doubt the Texas football staff is going to be watching my press conference. I'm pretty sure they got some analyst in there, some guy that's getting the water or something that's watching that press. I need you to go over there and watch that press conference today at 12 o'clock. But you talk about – go ahead, Joe.
No, because he gave you something that Steve Sarkisian didn't, availability of his football players, right? So, Steve Sarkisian's not giving that. Again, you talked about his 2 left tackles, and one's a first-teamer. Mekhi Hart is a first-team All-Conference USA. So, yeah, you talking about – and you talked about them starting walk-ons. Well, I think – we have football players on our team that got a lot of playing time that are freshmen or further down the depth chart. You see Deshaun Jameson go out, and you see Austin Jordan come in for 15 plays against Alabama. And somebody said that today. I don't know if it's Steve Sarkisian or somebody else. Who would ever thought that Austin Jordan would have got 15 plays against Alabama? Austin Jordan didn't when he got up on Saturday. But guess what? He was called on, and he had to play football. There was times when I know Charles Wright was looking like he was ready to go in the ball game. When Hudson Card had that ankle injury. So regardless of their status, second team, third team, when their number's called, whether it's them or us, these football players are probably going to be ready to play because Steve Sarkisian's told us preparation, right? Preparation, adaptation, and finish, right? Be able to adjust. And this football team so far this year has shown us that they're ready to play ball when they step on between the white lines. They're going to play hard. They're going to play all 4 quarters, and they're going to be sound and disciplined, which is, again, Alabama 15 for 100. Texas had 5 penalties. Haven't turned the foot, minus Quinn Ewers, first series against ULM, throwing an interception, clean football and physical football. And I absolutely love the product that's on the field. We just need to continue to grow on it, regardless of the opponent, and just get better.
Let's talk about a standard. Let's talk about the standard because there's a standard now, right? There's a standard now, right? There's a standard. And that standard is to play better than you played the last time you played. For Texas to go out and do what they did on the defensive side of the ball against the best quarterback in college football and make them play undisciplined and not allow them. I think he had more yards, threw for more yards in the first in the 4th quarter than he had the entire game. Take away, and again, we're not about taking away runs because obviously they scored on an 80-yard run. You take that run away, and you're talking about Texas gave up 80 yards of rushing yards to Alabama, where you felt like that. We believe that their offensive line was going to be the weakest point, and that's what we've seen on Saturday. But you set a standard from yourself, right? You set a standard. That standard right now, and I'm going to tell you where it's at. All right. I was doing some numbers before the show, and I already kind of talked to you about this, right? Currently, Texas, this is crazy as hell, right? Because I told you if we wind up somewhere between 50 and 70, we'll win a whole bunch of games, right? Currently, Texas sits at number 35 in the country in scoring defense. 35 in the country. Number 26 in Power 5. They're number 26 in Power 5, number 30 in the country. And I can tell you that nobody else looking at that schedule played an Alabama-type team if you go up those numbers. And I was also telling Jeremy, again, if you take that touchdown that we gave away at ULM in the 4th quarter, you're sitting at number 5 in the country, number 3, Power 5. There's a standard that's been set. And you talked about what Josh Pate said, right? In the first game versus the second game. They went out there, they did what they did in the first game and the second game. They cannot regress moving forward as a defense. They have to take this and play with the same energy level, same physicality each and every week going into the season. I think there's a good chance that this defense, believe it or not, because there's not, you got Oklahoma that's had some hard time putting up some points this week. Texas Tech's probably going to try to put up some points on you, but there's not a lot of high-scoring offenses in the Big 12. There's a good chance that Texas might finish in the top 25 if they keep the same standard, right? In the top 25 in the nation of defense. My God, from 99 in the country to damn near 35 after 2 weeks is absolutely crazy to me.
And it's not to me. If you go back and you watch our previews of the defensive line, linebackers, and secondary, we talked about them having 5 guys that could cover. And I tweeted this out yesterday. Texas has been able to put pressure on the quarterbacks. They have been able to tackle, and they've been able to cover. All 3 facets of defense. We talked about Jaylan Ford. Jaylan Ford did not have a good game against the University of Louisiana Monroe. Jaylan Ford dominated the game against Alabama and made plays whenever he was called upon, made tackles whenever he was called upon. And then Coburn's resurgence, Tavondre Sweat's resurgence. Alfred Collins scored or had the best, pass rush grade out of the defensive line. You got time blitzes from 41, Jaylan Ford, when you needed to. You sent corners like Ryan Watts. He didn't make that tackle. You got safeties coming down like Anthony Cook making stops at the line of scrimmage. If you go back and listen to our preseason preview, we told you it starts with the defensive line and their ability to stop the run, number one, which they did, minus the 81-yarder that we talked about. Outside of that, Alabama rushes for 80 total yards in the football game. And they got a stable of running backs. When you talk about Gibbs and how versatile he is, when you talk about Jason McClellan and how good he is, this defense, if they continue to grow, and David said it a little bit earlier, we haven't pulled up any comments, but I read it, talked about Texas saying it's about us. If it continues to be about them and they focus and play to the level of their potential in the front 7 in the secondary, absolutely they can finish with a top 25 scoring defense. I believe it because Pete Kwiatkowski's really good at scheming red zone. When teams get plus territory inside the 20, Alabama had to kick a lot of field goals, just like we did, and that's where we got to get better is our red zone efficiency on offense. We got to punch it in. Like we can't take field goal attempts. We have to score 7 to reach our potential. But if they can get folks behind the chains like they did against Alabama, and Bryce Young had to make that Heisman performance off schedule. Nobody's open because our guys are covering. He's having to buy time and again, I don't know how he busted that tackle from Ryan Watts because he's a Heisman level player. That's how, and made his way down the sideline. Again, I felt like that was the most egregious call. Yeah, the safety, yeah, the pass interference, but I thought that holding on Ovia Gofu when he was able to get outside was probably the most egregious call that I saw. Hands inside, I get that was just a full-fledged hold. But if they could continue to do that, I believe, like you, that they can find themselves playing a lot of big games. Like you said, if they finish top 50 in defense, they're probably going to have a pretty good record at the end of the season and probably going to reach their goal of playing on December 3rd. They just got to keep the focus about them. Everybody's a gray, invisible person that they're playing against and just continue to get better, continue to hone their craft.
So Michael Aldrich, 17. The best thing about the game was the resilience the team showed after the 81-yard run. Nothing like Caleb Williams' run last year. So inspiring. And again, I pulled this one up because somebody else brought up the fact that Jaylan Ford also is the one that gave up that run. They, on multiple occasions in the first quarter, Texas could have buried their head in the sand like they did last year, and Alabama could have just rolled on by. I think that was the most important thing for me to see this year because mental toughness is almost as important as physical toughness when you're playing between those lines. And for them to show the mental toughness on Saturday when things didn't go their way, safety coming off the board when you thought you had a safety, not a problem, no worries. Go back to the next play, or I think it was 4th down, or I think that went to a 4th down, come back, stop them, continue to stop them in the second, third quarter, because they could have let that become a disaster. But I think their mental toughness is actually almost moved parallel or concurrently with the physical toughness this team's taken. And they've talked about it all year. I mean, during the spring, during the fall, we got to overcome adversity. Every time you hear these players talk, right, it's about adversity. It's about adversity. It's about adversity. About adversity. So I think they got to the point where they are living and breathing mental toughness so that they don't collapse when these things are happening. So I think the mental toughness of this team is almost as important as the physical toughness they showed on Saturday.
And discipline, right? Run fits. We talked about it. Be gap sound, be where you're supposed to be, make the player do your job. And I got after Jalen in the in-game chat, and those folks that were listening right along with us were watching the game with us. And I said he failed his responsibility in that play on the 81-yarder. I went back and I watched it. He didn't fail his gap responsibilities. He got caught up in the wash when he was scraping off the defensive line. It was one of those things where he just was too close to the line of scrimmage and got caught up in the wash. He was going where he was supposed to be. And if he doesn't get caught up, again, if he's further off the line of scrimmage and goes directly to his gap responsibility, then that play's not made. And I called him out and I was wrong. He just got caught up in the wash, because of where he was in proximity to the defensive line, didn't allow him to get to where he needed to be. But it wasn't just a blown gap responsibility like I called it during the game. He was scraping and got caught up in the wash. Maybe play a little bit further off the line of scrimmage to allow yourself to get to that hole, but he was where he was supposed to be. He just got caught up by the defensive tackle and the offensive lineman, and he didn't get blocked out of the play. But at the same time, you'd like to see him be able to scrape a little quicker or get back off the line of scrimmage to not get caught up in the fray. But I read it wrong initially during the game and went back and watched it. And after that, like you said, even if he did, right? Even if he didn't do his job and didn't fill that gap, and he felt like the responsibility was his to make that play, his performance after that completely erased it. Like folks said, he was shot out of a cannon, and I said it. If you're going to have Overshown playing on the edge, right? If you're going to utilize him on the edge, then Jalen Ford has to be able to make those plays in the middle of the field like DeMarvin Overshown did against Spencer Sanders. That's exactly what they did. They let the offensive line wash the defensive line, opened up a hole between him and Bryce Young, and he immediately, just like he was playing on kickoff coverage, shot out of a cannon and brought him down to the ground just that fast. Hell of a play by Jalen Ford. And again, if he owned that play, or if the defensive coordinator or linebackers coach said, "Hey, Jalen, you didn't do what you were supposed to do on that play," he definitely made up for it in his play. And again, that's what this team hasn't done. And Rod talked about it today in his show. Another fourth quarter lead again, and Rob was giving the team flowers. Like, don't take this the wrong way. Rob was giving the team flowers. But he believes, like us, there's no such thing as moral victory. Again, it's a loss, but there's a lot that can be grown from this loss. But what he talked about was another fourth quarter lead blown to a ranked team. This continues that pattern. I think this one's different. I think this one's totally different. When you're talking about Oklahoma, Baylor, and Oklahoma State, those are teams that were probably, if the point spread was 10, I'd be surprised. Those are teams that you felt like you could play with. Their conference opponents. Again, the Red River Shootout's a neutral site game. This team was, like I said, when I looked at the Fox scores, we had the TV down, but we're streaming it for our Inner Circle members. Everybody had it in the 40s for Alabama and the teens for Texas. If they had it in the teens for Texas, everybody felt like they were going to get blown out, drugged, whatever word you want to use. And that team came and they physically dominated Alabama for 3 quarters. Again, we read the stats to the folks at the end of the third quarter, and just resilient, right? Resilient. They had the opportunity to hang their head after the 81-yarder. They didn't. They came back and they fought. So I was very happy with, like you said, the demeanor, the mental toughness, the physical toughness that this football team showed through 2 games.
Let's talk about this defensive backfield, man. Jaron Thompson, Anthony Cook, and Watts, Jahdae Barron, Jalen Gilbo, hell, Deshaun Jameson for a little bit, Austin Jordan for a little bit. It's crazy to think that a true freshman got in Alabama, man, 15 snaps against Alabama. That tells you where they think he is on the 2 deep, right? But damn, the dudes were coming downhill fast, man. Anthony Cook's tackle, open field tackle, look like they always talk about being shot out of a cannon, right? And I think Steve Sarkisian calls it shooting their gun. I think it's what he calls it, shooting their gun. They shoot their gun, man, like boom. His reaction time on that bubble screen to make that tackle in the backfield was absolutely nuts, dude. Jaron Thompson, I don't remember who it was, if it was Gibbs or if it was Jace McClellan. When he met that dude in the hole, that was because, again, physicality is been a thing, right? Missing tackles has been a thing for Texas. And if you go look at the PFF numbers, believe it or not, Texas had, you ready for this? 6 missed tackles on Saturday. 6 against Alabama on Saturday. But that tackle between, like, from Jaron Thompson and that tackle from Anthony Cook, this secondary has an opportunity to be really special this year if they can continue to play like they played. I think Anthony Cook had 10 tackles. I think Jaron Thompson had 11 or 12 tackles. And it's because they were coming downhill to make those tackles, which if you're telling me you're shutting Alabama's defense out, Bryce Young, the Heisman quarterback, didn't throw over 300 yards, like 280 yards. And I think 134 of those came in the fourth quarter. So you're talking about between the first quarter and the third quarter, that defensive backfield gave up 134 yards passing to the Heisman Trophy winner, man. That secondary showed up, man. I don't know what they were showing because it's hard to see, in a game when you can't see all 22, and what they're doing to those wide receivers, which sucks because I'd love to see, what their spacing was between those guys. And what they played, was a zone, was a man, but kudos, man, to that secondary. I know the defensive line showed out, linebackers did their thing, Marvin Overshown, Jalen Ford, but that defensive backfield played their ass off on Saturday.
There's 3 guys that came in with the 2018 class that's still on that defense that are contributors, and that's Keandre Coburn, DeMarvion Overshown, and Anthony Cook. And there may be more, but those are the first 3 that I wrote down because I think these guys are playing themselves into a position. Now, I'm not into mock drafts, and I'll do that kind of stuff when the season is over and these guys have played all 12 games, regular season, and whatever, December, if we're lucky enough to play on December 3rd and then find ourselves in a bowl game, 14 games. But if these guys, 99, 0, and 11, continue to play and be productive, because, again, I think they all have the measurables to play in the league. If they continue to be productive at the rate they're being productive, and I know Queen Bee's in the chat, continue to be productive like they have been over these last 2 games, they are going to find themselves competing for an NFL roster spot sometime next summer. Mark my words. Coburn, of course, we know Overshown's probably going to be drafted, but Anthony Cook, is his versatility and his ability to tackle out of the secondary, because he's not undersized, could find themselves competing for a roster spot in the National Football League come next summer.
It's crazy when you can pick out. So, let's talk about where we at. Let me go back up here. Where are we at? Cody Phillips. I pulled up PFF numbers, Cody Phillips, and I'm going to run through you real quick. Only 1 missed tackle from the front 7, apparently, and that is absolutely true. Okay, so I'm going to run through the missed tackles, and you can almost know where they're at. That's how crazy it is, right? In this football game, you can almost spot every one of these missed tackles. Ja'Day Barron had 2 missed tackles. Anybody know where Jalen Gilbo's missed tackle came from? On the bubble screen. Everybody remembers that at the beginning of the game with Gibbs when he missed him just outside. Mm-hmm. Ryan Watts, you know where his missed tackle came from? Bryce Young, sack.
Sack possibility.
Jaron Thompson had a missed tackle. Anthony Cook had 1 missed tackle. And Moro Jomo was the only front 7 person that had a missed tackle on Saturday. 1 missed tackle in your front 7 on Saturday.
You know what I liked on the safety? Let's call it the safety, whatever you want to call that play, because it was so crazy. one penalty, no two penalties, no penalties, incomplete pass, whatever you want to call it. There was a man from each level of the defense in that photo around Bryce Young. It was Tavondre Sweat, 93, DeMarvin Overshown, 0, and 13, Jalen Gilbo. That tells you exactly what Steve Sarkisian has been talking about since the summer. These guys run to the football. These guys, I got hats around the football. If the first guy happens to miss one of those 6 tackles that you're talking about, I got 8 other guys around the football to make that play. And again, talking about the talent level, talking about the scheme of Pete Kwiatkowski and Gary Patterson, but the hustle, the try, the physicality that this team is playing with right now, it just warms my heart being a defensive guy. Like I said, you got guys in the back of the end zone from every level of the football field. You got a corner, you got a defensive lineman, and you have a linebacker all around Bryce Young on that whatever play you want to call it that ended up being 4th and 7 and them having to punt it to us and create a short field. But I love the hustle because, again, talent's one thing, but giving your all every single play for your teammates is what makes defenses great in my mind. Assignment sound, physical, and just discipline and want to.
All right, enough about the defense, I think. Let's talk about this offense a little bit. Let's talk about this offensive line.
Can I thank somebody real quick? Only because Johnny Munoz brought it up. So I do want to thank a couple of new members of Texas Football Talk's Inner Circle. Phil joined Saturday, and Nolan Daniels joined Saturday after the game. So, of course, they weren't highlighted on the postgame show in green. But there are 103 folks in here, 105 folks in here currently. Johnny Munoz, please ask you guys to hit the like button. We're asking you to hit the like button. Again, we know Monday Night Football is going on right now. There's a lot of competing interest out there, but there's 105 of you in here. And if folks didn't get a chance to catch us live, at least if you hit the like button, it'll go higher on the YouTube algorithm and folks can find it later. So please hit that like button. Please subscribe to Texas Football Talk if you haven't. And please give joining the Inner Circle your consideration. We really appreciate you guys being in here tonight.
So I'm going to bring up another comment. We'll get back to the offensive line here. Anthony Cook is the best one-on-one tackler in this program in a long time. I don't remember him missing one because, man, he was terrific. He did. So last year he had 0 missed tackles last year, playing at that star position. And I think, what did I say? He had 1 missed tackle. Was he one of the guys that had a missed tackle yesterday? I don't think so. So
talking about Anthony Cook, you said he had 1.
It's in 1.
Yeah.
So in 15 games, playing safety is a little different than playing probably spur too, because you're coming downhill. There's a good chance that you got to hope somebody's behind you. But yeah, he had 1 missed tackle, but he had 0 missed tackles last year, playing that star position. Because we went through the PFF numbers last year, I think, prior to actually when we did the defensive backs preview, we talked specifically about Anthony Cook and his ability to be able to tackle in space. He definitely doesn't miss, man. When he comes up, man, he's locking on to some legs, man, and he's definitely like letting go.
And we met with him. Again, we met him and talked to him for about 30, 45 minutes. And to me, he's not the biggest guy. I'm a 5'11", 195 pounds sometimes, and today I weighed 192. But Anthony Cook is 6'1", and I think 190 is what the depth chart says. But he is physical. For a guy, again, that's 2 inches taller than me and we're the same weight, I'm not sticking my nose in there with 350-pound guys. I was a receiver, and I stayed out the perimeter and didn't want no part of that. But he has it. Like, he likes to get in there, just like Jaron Thompson, Bug, Lufkin, Texas, East Texas guy. They like to get in there and mix it up. And I that's exactly what you want out of your safety position, because both of them can cover. We were worried about Jaron Thompson's ability to cover. We gave his job to Keaton Crawford in the summer. And 28 is around the football and makes plays. But I know you want to get off the defense, but I can't be more proud of the way they play assignment sound, fundamental, hungry football at all 3 levels so far this season.
Candace talking about how long has it been since we have been able to say 1 missed tackle, hustle, and the offensive line block well. It's culture change. That's what it is. It comes down to culture change. It comes down to, you may have had a shitty season last year. They say the progression of a program is usually best between its first and second year. But they went. There's a reason why they turned this team over. There's a reason why they turned the team over, because it comes down to culture, buying into what you want to do, developing these guys. Man, how long has it been since it felt like that we could watch a game, the second game of the year, and Jeremy talked about developing guys where they have a shot to go to the NFL. You know, I think they said, 40 first-round picks to our 3 since that national championship game.
Yeah.
That'll blow your mind, you know, but it comes down to development, belief, understanding the schemes. Second year under this defensive coaching staff with no changes, right? So understand the scheme, let you move faster, let you play more free, which allows you to be more balanced and more physical. But I think that's what it comes down to, is really culture change, man. And Steve Sarkisian's coming here working for 2 of the best college coaches of all time, in Pete Carroll and Nick Saban. And he knows exactly what he wants to do to change his program. And he's not going to change what he needs to do in order to have success. Everybody else has got to change to who they are for us to be successful.
And you know that this is getting back to the football team, because Steve Sarkisian acknowledged it today. He said he feels like the fans can see this program moving in the right direction. We talked about it from the recruiting angle on Saturday post game. You had recruits from 23, 24, and 25 there that Steve Sarkisian was selling a message off a 5-7 football record last year. And you got the number 2 by some recruiting services, number 3 by other recruiting services, commitments coming to the 40 acres in December, possibly selling them off a 5-7, that this program is going the right direction. And now the fans are feeling that. Steve Sarkisian's feeling that from the fans. But talking about toughness, right? Steve Sarkisian said today that he thought his guys played really tough and played through a lot of adversity and stayed in it against a really good team. He called Alabama a really good team. I would say so. They came in number 1, they left number 2. But yeah, I'd say they're a really good team. But he loves the way his team, again, where they're at mentally. Again, you're never going to find – when you play disciplined football and you play physically tough football and you have the number 6 blue chip ratio, talent was never a thing at the University of Texas, right? We talked about it. They have 4 stars and 5 stars all over this roster. They have five stars on offense. But could you develop them? Could they continue to get better? Could they continue to be more disciplined? Could they fight for 60 minutes for each other? And what you're starting to see, in my opinion, is the development of this coaching staff mixed with the talent that this football team has, and that's the product that you got on Saturday. And it's like I said, can they not start smelling themselves? They not feed into the rat poison. They continue to play for each other, down in, down out. I think he said better. I don't remember what he said today specifically, but it was an outstanding quote. Basically, don't rest on your laurels. We need to get better each and every snap, each and every possession, each and every game. The development of this coaching staff mixed with the talent on this football team starts melding, and they're going to be pretty doggone dangerous. This is game 2. They're going to be pretty doggone dangerous come November, December. And the adversity was they lost their starting quarterback, who threw for 134 yards in less than one quarter of football. And then their second team quarterback comes in and he busts his ankle in the second quarter, has to play the whole second half limping around. But they never quit. They kept fighting. And I know we're going to transition to offense and that stuff.
We may not, because all the comments are really defense related. Anthony Cook was a high level recruit, but he's a great example of development at UT. He was a 107-pound technical corner. We reported to UT. He developed into a 190-pound safety with NFL potential. I think it's because he played corner, he played spur, that slot corner, which is really, really hard. It's probably the hardest position out there, trying to cover a slot corner, use the fastest guy on the damn field. Plus, you're asked to come up and make tackles. And now he's playing safety. And I think that you can talk that piece to recruits. That to me, that's what's important. You took a guy that came out in 2018, right? 2018, he's been through I think just what Tom Herman Tom Herman into 2 years with Steve Sarkisian, and you could see the growth. And that's important to be able to tell recruits. This is where Anthony Cook, and Anthony Cook will say it too. This is where Anthony Cook was when we came in. This is where Anthony Cook is now after being developed after 5 years in the program. Now, what would Anthony Cook look like if Steve Sarkisian was the head coach in 2018? Probably a bunch of these guys that probably weren't here anymore. You know what I'm saying? You probably turned over the roster because they were successful in developing these guys.
And I'm not going to give all the flowers to Gary Patterson, and I'm not going to give all the flowers to Pete Kwiatkowski, but I'm going to say the combination of the two looked at Anthony Cook and they said, how can we get his skill set on the football field and manifest it into making plays? And they said, well, he's played outside at corner. He's played inside at Stark. Guess what? He's got excellent coverage skills. We want all the 5 guys in the defensive backfield to be able to cover. Guess what? He's our new free safety. We got a thumper in Jaron Thompson. Let's make him our strong safety. He's got coverage ability. Let's move Jahdae Barron in the slot and let Deshaun Jameson and Ryan Watts, who nobody is throwing at. Alabama, ULM, nobody wants to throw at Ryan Watts. He's pretty much shut down one side of the football field at this point because I know PFF shot us 1 attempt at ULM, and I think he had like 1 or 2 yesterday. Nobody's challenging number 6. And I just think it's a combination of Gary Patterson, Pete Kwiatkowski, and they're looking at these guys. And I think that's one of Gary's jobs is looking at his own roster and figure out where these guys, how they can scheme them up to utilize their skill set, as Steve Sarkisian says, and he said it again today. My job is to put them in position to make plays and get the most out of them, and that's exactly what this coaching staff is doing.
I'm gonna tell you that linebacker core. Let's go to those numbers real quick because somebody brought up DM1. Did Tucker Dorsey have some good moments? I missed. Yep. Yeah, I missed most of the game, so I didn't see how he did. He was the highest ranked. He was the highest rated defensive player according to Pro Football Focus. I'm gonna give you his numbers real quick. All right, and it's not very often you see every one of these guys in the green across the board. And again, played minimum snaps. Talking about 11 total snaps yesterday. 2 rush defense, 2 pressures, and then 6 coverage, which was absolutely important. So his total grade was 75.4. His rush defense was, if I'm looking at it, looks like it was 4th on the defense yesterday. Tacklings was at 73.2. His pass rush was at 68.8. And his coverage skills for a linebacker was the highest of all of the linebackers yesterday. Actually, I'm wrong. DeMarvion Overshown had 67.5. So he played out of his 2 pressure snaps, pass rush snaps. He got 1 total hit on the quarterback. So he actually he did pretty damn good yesterday. So somebody you picked up at the last minute from James Madison actually played a hell of a game yesterday. So somebody brought him up, wanted to give him a shout out there because he did his thing, man. That linebacker core, DeMarvion Overshown, his numbers are off the charts as well. 80.7 in tackling from a linebacker position. You're not missing a lot of tackles, especially with all the opportunities. I think he had 13 tackles yesterday. I think he was lead tackle with 13. DeMarvion Overshown.
Yeah. Ford had 10. Now they're doing their job, man. They're doing exactly what they're supposed to do. Defensive line's doing exactly what they're supposed to do. Like, I'm impressed, very impressed, and didn't really see this much improvement. Thought it would be improved. Liked where the linebackers were and where the secondary was headed, and said it was going to come down to the defensive line, and they have done everything we've asked them to do at this point. And out-physicaled, like I said, I think out-physicaled Alabama for 4 quarters. I feel like we haven't talked any offense.
We haven't. But you keep talking. There was another question you brought up, and I had to go look it up. You know what I'm saying? You were talking about targets versus receptions, right? How many targets did Watts have versus how many receptions he had yesterday? They threw at him 3 times yesterday. 3 times, 2 passes. At 4 point yards per reception, right? So you're not giving up anything. Hell, you're not even giving up half a first down to match Jaron Thompson. Jaron Thompson, if you add up all of the cornerbacks and then add up all those guys together, And then you look at Jaron Thompson's numbers, it almost equals the amount of targets that Jaron Thompson had against him the entire game. He had 9 targets yesterday. And out of those 9 targets, 6 receptions, 66.7. We always talk about that. It's a good number. I'm good with that number. Right at about 9.7 yards per reception. And more than likely that was because they found those zones in between Jaron Thompson.
All Latu and Gibbs. Yep.
Yep. So, they definitely wanted to throw at Jaron Thompson as a safety yesterday. But if you're looking at Anthony Cook, 5 targets, 3 receptions. Deshaun Jameson obviously didn't play, but I think 7 plays total. Targets to Jameer Johnson. Even when he came to the game, they threw it in 4 times. Not a lot of, Jalen Gilbo 1 for 1, but just wanted to kind of go down those coverage numbers as well. So
no, they knew early on that they were going to have to utilize Gibbs and Latu in the middle of the field because the corners were pretty much locking them up. Like I said, Ryan Watts, what did you say, 3 attempts, 2 receptions, but those 2 receptions only accounted for 4 yards per reception. So, no, defensive backs are doing exactly what we're asking them to do, and they had to go – Bill O'Brien had to decide to go across the middle and utilize his backs if he was going to move the football, throwing the ball, which is ultimately it was Bryce Young. It's Bryce Young getting out of the pocket, off schedule, and making plays at the end of the game that ultimately allowed Alabama to win. But if you were going man on man, wide receivers against corners, Texas held up pretty doggone well.
Yeah, so his snaps per target was 11.3 for Ryan Watts. For every 11.3 snaps, they would throw the ball at him. And Jahdae Barron was 6.8. Jahdae Barron was actually your highest rated defensive back in coverage yesterday or Saturday. So, all right, let's talk a little offense, man. Can we talk a little offense? I'm going to switch these numbers over to the offense side of the ball. All right. Obviously, being in the red zone, only be able to score, 1 touchdown is definitely something that Steve Sarkisian was pretty upset about. Because those taking that 3 instead of getting 4 more, if you add 1 touchdown up, you've won the game. How many pressures do you think the offensive line gave up against Alabama? Total
Less than a handful. Probably 5. I'll go 5.
So that number is, if I'm looking at, all right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 total pressures against that defensive front from Alabama. 5.
Well, I kind of knew that because, I didn't know because I pulled up PFF's. I'm the one that tweeted out Christian Jones, Hudson, and Cole Hudson and Kelvin Banks' numbers yesterday. That was me that screenshotted that and sent it out. So I knew those 3 played very well. I wasn't so sure about Hayden Conner and Jake Major's numbers as far as pass protection because it was those 3 offensive linemen that I named, Christian Jones, Hudson, and Kelvin Banks, and then it was the running backs. But everybody was green. It seemed like everybody was green until you got to the Russian offense, and we'll talk Russian offense. The holes weren't there for Bijan to get through initial point of contact. He generally makes the first guy miss, which he normally did in this game, but Alabama's second swarm was right there to knock him down close to the line of scrimmage. Not a big running day. But again, you're talking about two true freshmen and Christian Jones' development under Kyle Flood and how much he's grown over the past year. It's similar to the defense. Like they're similar to Andre Coburn. I was really worried about Christian Jones. I felt like he would start. I felt like him and Andre Carrick would battle it out. But you could see why Christian Jones, and we talked about this last year when Kyle Flood came in and released that tape, that Christian Jones was his favorite offensive lineman because he always used him as an example of technique and what to do. It's just that physicality, and his body's gotten stronger, and he's performing. So those 3 offensive linemen have definitely set themselves up. They're definitely performing better than the other 2, grade-wise as far as PFF is concerned in the eyeball test. But Jake Majors and Hayden Conner played very, very well, in my opinion.
They all did. I'm looking at the numbers, and it was there again. It comes down to run blocking, right? Run blocking. Their pass blocking, phenomenal. You're talking about 81.9 from Kelvin Banks, 77.6 from Christian Jones. It's funny because somebody tweeted out that I think it was an NFL scout that tweeted out that that catch by Bijan for 43 yards down the sideline.
Yeah, it's Dane Brugler. Yeah, it's Dane Brugler. Yep.
And all you see is Kelvin Banks one-on-one with help me out, man. God, dog. 31. Can't even think of his name right now.
Anderson. Will Anderson.
I'm on the way to UTSA. I'm on to UTSA. Will Anderson. And all you see is him almost just like pick him up and push him out, man. It's unbelievable that we're going to have some of these guys around for the next 3 years, to be able to lean on them for the next 3 years. And the experience they're getting now is nothing going to – they went against the toughest defensive front they're going to play all year. And they manhandled them, which was wonderful to see. That's all I can say.
That's what I'm saying. Like, confidence out of this game. Like I said, there is no moral victories, but the confidence that the offensive line and the defense should take out of this game, and the receivers, like Jordan Whittington, if Quinn Ewers doesn't go out, I think he has a career game. Quinn was just able to I tweeted this I sent a text to Rod during his show, and him and Mike talked about it. His ability to anticipate, his ability to be able to see Whittington come across the middle in front of the linebackers' faces, or behind the linebackers in front of the safeties, and throw them open. The deep ball to Worthy. If Quinn Ewers hangs out for 4 quarters in this football game, doesn't get hit by Dallas Turner late and mess up his clavicle, I really feel we're on our way to scoring 35. And I feel like our defense still has the potential to hold them to right at 20 points. And I think we walk out of this game feeling a hell of a lot better because probably got the win. But again, all that's circumstantial, all that's, subjective. But I feel like we were in a really good spot with our offense before Quinn got hurt. And then Hudson came in and played well. Hudson came in and did his job. Unfortunately, he got injured too. And, his best skill set or a facet of his game that we really appreciate, he wasn't able to utilize, and that's his legs, to full potential. But he got in here and slung it as well. Very impressed.
Yeah. So the sack by Will Anderson was actually due to Bijan tripping over Hudson Card's foot. I think statistically Anderson's sack will go against Kelvin Banks, but it was not due to Banks. I can tell you the numbers we used, Pro Football Focus, they didn't give that sack to Banks. Banks had one hurry. Jake Majors had one hurry. Christian Jones had 2 hurries. Cole Hudson had 1 hurry, and then Hayden Conner gave up a sack, according to Pro Football Focus. Not sure how exactly they get their sack numbers, but the offensive line, that's all the pressures and sacks that they actually gave to the offensive line. So they didn't get Kelvin Banks.
Hang on real quick. And somebody kind of picked on me, and I find it funny because they've obviously never watched the show. They were Miami Hurricanes fan. Kind of got on me about using PFF as our basis for analyzing football games. And I said, man, you realize that we do a post-game show, and everything we talk about on our post-game show is exactly what we see, with our eyes. We don't have any – PFF doesn't release their grades until Sunday morning. We utilize our eyeballs and our history and our knowledge of the game to give our assessments. Now, if PFF doesn't align with what we see on our eyeballs, then we'll go back and rewatch the game and see where we missed it or where they may have missed it. But yeah, and that's the stuff we tweet out. If our visual inspection of the football game matches up with PFF, that's generally what we'll throw to the masses. Because again, it's a subscription that we pay for, and like to see exactly if we're missing the mark. And then, like I said, we'll go back and rewatch it. But yeah, PFF hit it, and I think they probably. You're talking about who gets credit for the sack and this, that, and the other. I think they probably analyze that type stuff. If it's pre-snap, if it's this responsibility and this responsibility, but then they stunt and they got to hand off people to each other. It's probably a combination versus, hey, I'm lining up over this guy and I beat this guy into the backfield and took the quarterback down. So I'm sure they analyze that a little little deeper than, hey, because games is stunts and that twist and all that kind of stuff probably comes into their thoughts and they're in their grading system.
Yeah. Damn, it was so exciting. I look up at the clock, man. It's at about 55 minutes. This is one of those things where it's been kind of nonstop, man. Like, and I'll say 45 minutes of his defense. So when I tweet something out here in about 10 minutes when we get off here, I'm gonna have to. And we decided we were going to talk about Sarkisian's press conference, but it turned into a damn defensive show, like all defense, man. Because I think that's where everybody's really fired up with. But again, it comes to that standard. It comes back to that standard, right? You set a standard. Everybody that watches us, everybody that watches every other show, everybody that's watched that game is going to expect this standard or even better moving towards the season. And they set a standard. You can't regress from that standard that you set on Saturday.
And I think everybody trusts the offense. They come into the season, they're like, hey, our offense, scored 35 points a game. If they come out with the quarterback who could sling it a little bit better, who has more arm talent, I think we could reach 40. Yeah, I think your preseason projection was 41 points a game. The defense has been a surprise to folks. Like they're used to being in barn burners because the defense can't stop the opponent. Now they see the defense is raising their level. If our quarterback stays healthy, what's the potential of this football team? You got the best running back in college football by most people's, and he'll get his. I think these holes will start opening up. But I think Steve Sarkisian had a specific game plan for Alabama that was developed because he understood what we did. That their defensive backs don't have the ability to cover X. They don't have the ability to cover Whittington. And a person that you saw really show out against ULM that really didn't catch many balls was Jatavian Sanders. We ran a whole lot of 6 offensive linemen, a lot of Andre Carrick. We had 3 running backs in the backfield at times. We did a lot of different, schemes as far as personnel groupings in this football game. To beat up on Alabama the way Steve Sarkisian thought he could. The problem was when we got down inside the 20, we didn't punch the ball in the end zone. We set up for field goals, and that's something you can't do when you're facing a Heisman Trophy quarterback on the other side of the football field. And again, their touchdown, one of their touchdowns was an 81-yard run that I feel like if we'd have scraped a little bit better and been a little bit more sound, that one doesn't bust, and they're having to drive the football field. Somebody said today, when's the last time Alabama had to punt 6 straight possessions? Probably not very often, and probably not too recent, So again, I think we felt like we knew what we had on the offensive side of the football coming into the season, and the defense has been a pleasant surprise, and that's why we focused on it. And again, we didn't lie. The title of the show is what Sark said: press conference reactions and improved defense. So. Yeah, and like I said, we're defensive guys. Anytime you get to talking about defense, that's where we like to focus. But this offensive line, like I said, with these 2 freshmen and the way they're competing, like you said, 5 total pressures, 1 total sack, have played really, really well, pass protecting. Again, Whittington continues to get open. X is going to make plays. Jatavian Sanders showed his potential against ULM. It's just can we establish this run game? Can we start blowing people out of holes and watch Bijan and Roshan and Keelan do their thing? And I think that starts on Saturday. And I know I saw a comment about respect for UTSA. He must have been a late arriver to the show because we talked about all their first-team Conference USA, their size on offensive and defensive line, their first-team Conference USA quarterback that they have coming in here on Saturday. And, again, we'll profile them more on Thursday when we do our pregame show. But we respect the opponent. I know Steve Sarkisian does too. And the way these guys need to treat us is they're all faceless. Like you're probably not going to see another Alabama on the schedule, but you got to respect who you're playing each and every week. I thought you froze for a minute.
No, I'm reading. I'm reading here. So I went to ESPN because I was going to look at. I know. The last time that Alabama only scored, I think 20 points was last year at LSU. I think it was 20-17. But I was going to ESPN to kind of look at their schedule over the last couple of years because I was wondering when is the last time they only scored 20 points. But then the first story is right Alabama football panic meter. This is on the front page of ESPN college football. Alabama football panic meter rating the Crimson's Tide most pressing issues. Right. So I was scrolling down here looking at these things. Panic penalties, panic level 1. And then you start getting down to the offense line, panic meter 5. Man, like, holy shit, we better start panicking. Wide receivers, panic level 5 or panic meter 4. So I just thought it was funny. They were talking about how hot it was. I was reading that for a second. I got caught up there for a minute. I wasn't frozen.
Can I pull up Clinic Thinks comments real quick? He says, honest question, no disrespect. How can y'all do a show and call this PK's defense with a straight face? This has 0 traits of PK and is literally Patterson's 4-2-5, and he's run for decades. If you can find that and pull it up real quick, because I'm going to talk about evolution of football players. I'm going to talk about evolutions of coaches, right? So, Clinic, I'm going to be brutally honest with you, right? So, coaches can change philosophies based upon the talent and their skill set of their football team. If Gary Patterson and Pete Kwiatkowski, and the reason why I could call this Pete Kwiatkowski's defense is because he's currently the Texas football coach, or currently the Texas football team's defensive coordinator. So whether it's Gary Patterson's defense, Pete Kwiatkowski's defense, what I'm telling you is that they are, again, that's probably Gary Patterson's job, and I said this on the show earlier, is to self-scout his football team and figure out who are the best 11 and how to utilize them to keep the opposition from scoring points. So nobody's calling it PK's defense. Pete Kwiatkowski happens to be the defensive coordinator for the University of Texas, and him and his defensive staff, to include Blake Gideon, Terry Joseph, Jeff Choate, have put this football team on the football field. Again, you see 4-down linemen against Alabama, you're liable to see 3-down linemen against UTSA. They're going to utilize their team skill set to beat the opponent. That's how I can do it.
And don't tell it, Patterson, obviously, and understanding what you may be, Patterson influence, right? The best off-season transaction that happened in the Texas program, right? They're probably tied. Quinn Ewers, because he's going to be here for 3 years, right? You see what he did, 9 for 12 for 134 yards against Alabama before he got hurt, right? And Sweaty Pat, man. That I realized I watched the game yesterday, and I sent Jeremy a photo because people asked us who's going to be on the field, who's not going to be on the field as far as the coaching staff goes. And Pete Kwiatkowski was on the field yesterday, which last year he was in the box, I believe. And then next to him was Sweaty Pat on the sideline, throwing his arms down, man. I don't think that people keep asking, is he going to run off for Nebraska? I don't think that at this particular point, I don't think he wants to leave. I think he is content what he's doing in Austin. I think he's enjoying himself. He's not stressed out to a point where he's either going to have a stroke or a heart attack at the age of 68. And I think he said this. He said, I'm not going to go somewhere where I don't think they have an opportunity to win a national championship. I don't think he's ever won a national championship as either an assistant coach, a head coach, or any of those things, right? I may be wrong because I know he coached at Oklahoma at one particular point, I think, right? With Bob Stoops. Am I wrong? I think it was at Oklahoma with Bob Stoops.
I'm sorry. I got caught up reading the comments. What'd you say? No. I'm sorry.
Bob Stoops. I think it was with Bob Stoops at Oklahoma, Gary Patterson, if I'm correct. That's true, right?
Yeah, I think so.
I just don't think that he's going to leave, right? I don't think he's going to pick up his stuff and leave. I think he's found a home in Austin. I think he enjoys Austin. I think he enjoys what he's doing in Austin. He's sitting there looking at game film each and every week for the opponent. And you think that he worked on Alabama for the last 3 months? Absolutely. He's worked on all these teams for the last 3 months. He didn't just stop at Alabama. Okay, I kind of know what I want to do with Alabama. Let me go back to this coaching staff and say, hey, I think this is where they're vulnerable at. I think he went to every one of these teams, right, in the Big 12 and said, hey, this is what I seen on paper. This is where I think they're vulnerable at. Now let's start working on a game plan for all these teams. Now, you're obviously going to have to change depending on if quarterbacks get hurt, what the offense, those things. But he's worked on all these things. So to say that he didn't have an influence on it would be absolutely crazy. But at the same time, to think that he is the only one making the decision on what this defense is doing is absolutely crazy, especially when you have Pete Kwiatkowski, who is also a damn good defensive coordinator. People take that away from him. He had one bad season with guys he didn't get. In his crazy ass move people around for one season, right? Yeah. That's absolutely nuts to me. It's not like Pete Kwiatkowski wasn't a good defensive coordinator before he came to the University of Texas.
No,
His thing at Washington.
Cody did a great job of summing it up. It's Texas defense and the entire staff's game plan. Then credit goes to the players who are able to communicate and execute the game plan. Again, coaches have to evolve just like players do. You'd be crazy if you went from one conference, let's just say the SEC, where they have a certain style of offense that they play. Or use PK, right? PK came from the Pac-12. There's Oregon State, there's USC, there's Stanford, there's UCLA. They all run different offenses. Some may be similar, but they all have different skill sets and different players. And they're gonna utilize those players in the best way to win football games. And then he moves down to the Big 12, who has Oklahoma, Kansas State, Kansas, Oklahoma State, who run different offenses. And then he, like you said, he's got to look at his personnel and figure out, how do I put this group in the best chance to give them the best chance to win football games and stop offenses in the Big 12? And those weren't his guys. So I just said all that to say this, that each game plan evolves each week. And whether you're a base 3-down lineman, 4-down lineman, 2-down lineman with 4 linebackers, hell, when we talked about PK's defense initially, we called it a 2-4-5. Two interior linemen, 1 and a 3, and then two outside linebackers that played edge, and then 2 stand-up linebackers in the back. So, again, I think it evolves with the personnel that you have, and it even evolves even further with the game plan that you have to put in to beat a specific opponent week to week, and everybody has a say. But I believe Gary Patterson's big imprint on this defense is self-scouting and trying to help Pete Kwiatkowski figure out where these guys will play their best ball, where to line up and how to utilize them.
If people want to go watch Pete Kwiatkowski in a really good game, 2 games, was Washington against Oregon. I think it was Washington against Oregon, and then Washington against Alabama in the college football playoffs.
Yeah.
Those are 2 games you need to go back and watch, because it was 2 different types of quarterbacks, 2 different types of offenses. And the schemes that he came out with were he adapted to the teams he was playing, but he wasn't 2-4-5 in the entire game. Hell, at one particular point, he had a whole bunch of people standing up on the line. Hell, he had the nose tackle playing where the linebacker was playing at. And I think we don't need to go there this year. I don't think we need to go there now, because I think you've kind of figured out what you want to do. But to be able to expand it based on those teams is what he's able to do. But having Gary Patterson there, looking at these teams before you have an opportunity to actually game plan for them and be able to pinpoint on a screen to say, hey, these are the tendencies they have. These are the vulnerabilities they have. He knew exactly who Bryce Young was going to be. He knew exactly what Bill O'Brien was going to call. They had that joker. He had Bill O'Brien, they had him in a washing machine. Like, so, yes, each one of these guys made an impact, but it is Pete Kwiatkowski's defense. But I think that this game plan was put together by this entire coaching staff. Yeah,
and I'm probably going to talk about this, and then we'll probably take off because I got to start packing because I'm moving down to San Antonio tomorrow to hang out with Clint. But it's awesome having a quality 2 deep on defense with plenty of young guys to reload with. Again, we talked about Cole Hudson and Kelvin Banks' performance. We talked about Austin Jordan on the defensive backfield, Jalen Gilbo. Like, you have freshmen coming in this 2022 class, Steve Sarkisian's first class that he had, who are making plays, and it's exciting that they're coming in and they're not worried about throwing them in there against Alabama. They don't consider them a liability. They throw them out there and allow them to do what they need to do, and that is exciting. You got what I consider to be a true freshman quarterback as well. And yeah, there's a lot of depth coming. What we say, 57 out of 85 are freshmen or sophomores, and they're good. They're good, and they're getting developed by this coaching staff, and this program is definitely headed in the right direction. And I think this fan base realizes that. I think these recruits out on the 23, 24, and 25 class recognize that. I think the football team recognizes they're pretty doggone good. They just can't get into that rat poison and got to play each possession as it is.
Tom says Lincoln Riley's coming for GP. It's a rumor in PAC. I think there's a lot of people that want to come after Gary Patterson after watching that game against Alabama and helping this Texas defense to get where they were at on Saturday. There's a whole bunch of people going to be coming at him. But does he want to? I don't think that the only way that Gary Patterson's leaving Texas is for a national championship program or a possible national championship contending program to reach out and call him. I just don't think he's not going to go be somebody's defensive coordinator. Hell, they could have done that. I think LSU offered him the defensive coordinator position. I think Texas A&M called him to ask him if he wanted to be the defensive coordinator before they picked up their defensive coordinator in the summertime. He don't want to be a defensive coordinator. He's either going to be a head coach or he's going to do what he is doing now, where it's playing guitar, down on 6th Street and watching game film and loving what he's seeing from this Texas defense on Saturdays. It's just not a lot of pressure. And he's being paid by TCU. Like, what does he need to do? He's head coach for 20 years. He's got a damn statue outside of Amon Carter. Like, for a coach that's playing for Texas. Somebody said the other day on Twitter, man, we need to get that U-Haul. Go get a U-Haul, pack up that statue, and bring that shit down to Texas. Like, who has an active? There's still an active coach out there that has a statue outside of a stadium, which is absolutely
built that program.
He built that program. Yeah, he built that program, and I get it. But to me, he's not going to go somewhere to be a defense coordinator. He's absolutely not going to do it. He's not, because you're putting the same time and hours in, but have no control of the program. I think he loves where he's at right now, and I think he's got. I think he's close to the people. I think Sark and PK and those guys are close, man, and I think they enjoy each other. So
he spent his whole career doing more with less, right? And so he looks out at probably that group that's on my screensaver right now, because I put a new screensaver background up of Sark and the guys in the tunnel with Jatavian Sanders and Keaton Crawford carrying the flag. I saw it on Twitter and I snatched it up. But he looks at this group and he's like, I can help Pete Kwiatkowski build this thing. And they are headed in the right direction. 2 games into him and Pete Kwiatkowski's partnership. And like I said, they got freshmen coming out there playing a lot of snaps against Alabama and being very, very productive, like helping the team out. And I think it's going to continue. When you look at guys like Justice Finkley, Jamon Tapp on that defensive side, and then you go to that defensive backfield with like J.D. Coffey and these young kids that we brought in to play safety once Anthony Cook and Jaren Thompson move along. It's just I like that too, that there's depth and there's athletes here that Gary Patterson and Pete Kwiatkowski can mold and evolve into whatever scheme, whatever personnel packages they want to utilize to win football games.
This is something to watch out for. We'll leave it at this, man. David Williams, if UT can get either Jordan Hall or David Hicks to get Braylon Shelby to flip from USC, this current 2023 defensive recruiting class will help make UT's top 10 in the country by 2024. You're recruiting the dogs, man. You got to keep recruiting the dogs. And I'm going to tell you this, and I said it 1,000 times on the post-game show, you can't let this one Saturday, and again, there's no moral victories, but you have a lot that you showed. The respect is there. You can't let the rap poison take over. You have to play to that standard for the remainder of the season. And if you do that, you're giving yourself a shot to win the rest of these football games and may find yourself playing Alabama again as a 4 seed, in the college football playoff. It's a possibility. It really is a possibility, but they have to play that same standard that they played on Saturday night each and every weekend, man, with that same intensity, with that same fight, because that Texas Tech game is going to be a little bit more difficult if you don't have your guy Quinn Ewers out there, man, and it's coming fast. You got what, this week, and then next week you're going at Lubbock, and then you got West Virginia at home, right? I think West Virginia at home, and then you go into the Red River rivalry right after that. That's the next 3 games. That
is. One week at a time. Yeah, UTSA at home, Texas Tech away, and that's a 2:30 kickoff. They did release that today. That's a 2:30 kickoff, so no night game at Tech. Folks are worried about that. Like you said, at home at West Virginia, and then the neutral site game at Red River.
I don't think Cody Phillips. I don't think this hurt at all on the recruiting front. Colin Simmons, Taviano going to LSU this weekend instead of Austin Hurt. I don't think so. I think Tobiano's his own guy. He knows what Texas is. He's been there quite a few times. I think the last time he was there in March. He's got a bunch of close guys that are really close friends that are either committed or already on this program. I think you're still in it for Tobiano, but remainder of this season is going to say a lot. There's guys that you're going to get closer to signing day if you could continue to play like you are right now, because nobody expected. Yeah. I may say nobody expected you to win 10 games, and I'm not going to sit here and act like I did, because I felt that you were about an 8-4 team going into the season with the potential of winning 10 games, and that's to include a bowl game. That's where I was at. I honestly could say that. But I think after what you showed on Saturday, if you can continue to play at that level, yeah, you give yourself a shot to win the next 11 games. So we'll kind of see where it's at. But I'm going to let Jeremy get off here. I know he's going to pack up. I'm going to see him tomorrow night. And then we'll kind of figure out how we're going to do these shows. I think Jeremy's going to be staying at a hotel downtown San Antonio, if I'm not mistaken. So he'll be doing his shows from the hotel. He's got to pack his stuff up now. But we appreciate y'all listening to us on this Monday night. I know it was exciting. I'm sitting here sweating like I was watching the Alabama game again on Saturday. But we appreciate y'all listening as always. Y'all have a wonderful rest of your week. We will see you on Thursday, more than likely, for our pregame for UTSA. We got some homework to do on them, but we'll see you on Thursday, unless something else breaks between now and then. But appreciate y'all listening as always. Have a good week.
I already started my homework, but yeah.
Let me get rid of this real quick. I got to get rid of that. You can find us on Facebook at Texas Football Talk, on Instagram at Texas Football Talk, and on Twitter at Texas Football Talk. Hook 'em.